Hi again. I hope you had a good break and welcome to those who are just joining us now. Now let's move on to our second workshop where we will be able to have exchanges with you participants today, together with our moderator, Ms. Johanne Bélanger, who gave us a testimonial this morning about her own diagnostic errancy before finding a name to her disease. So the workshop is about how can we cope with diagnostic errancy. She gave us a brief description of this workshop, and let me read it for you. The time of a long errancy, how to get through the emotional turmoil generated by diagnostic errancy in a climate of mutual welcome. This workshop has as its objective to find means to lighten up the internal suffering that can result from this process. So I give you the floor, Joanne. If you want to introduce us to your workshop and see what you would like to explore with people today. Thank you, Gail. I was telling myself earlier, it's quite a challenge to do a workshop at this time of day. Gail, I hope you took the time to do things before starting the workshop. Earlier, I said maybe we need to stretch a little bit. It's a time where I become tired during the day sometimes. And the word that comes to me when I say together is the word compassion and the word self-compassion, compassion for oneself, because we go through a lot of things where we're going through an diagnostic errancy, we're going through chaos. And I think we've heard this so much during all the testimonial this morning, people who took the floor, Gail, who spoke about the different realities that people can live, the obstacles that they can be confronted with, being told that it's in our head, it's psychosomatic. We also heard testimonials from moms telling us how it's suffering, how much energy it takes from them. So I'm telling myself that it's important to have compassion for oneself. And since we are together in this sharing today, we can also have compassion for others. And we can tell each other that in this sharing, if we do it together, we can give ourselves means of helping. We can sow a little seed in someone, and that will help us better get through our diagnostic odyssey. And you all come with what you have, with who you are. Maybe this workshop will allow you to leave with something, maybe not. Maybe I will ask you questions, maybe I'll invite you to speak. Maybe you will have things to share. Maybe there are things that you won't feel like sharing. Or maybe nothing will come to you. I often tell my clients, let things float, let things come, let it come to your mind. We can leave, and there is an internal journey that can continue, and things that can be left with us. Sometimes it can be left with us. Okay, I heard this. Maybe it could help others. I don't pretend to be able to tell you that find all the ways we can so as to no longer having any pain and suffering and all that. I don't have a magic wand to find all solutions. I often told my clients, when you experience difficult things, I would like to have a magic wand for you so that everything goes well for you. But it's always more nebulous than that. It's a path with brambles and obstacles, and with the ways we can share. We have a workshop together, we help each other, we help others too. But in brief, it could be means that will help us to continue to experience things the best we can. And what I wanted to tell you based on that is, as I said earlier, possibly nothing comes to mind immediately. We just have to be receptive and wait for what's to come. In the first stage, I would like to ask you something. Gail asked you the question a little bit this morning. If you could please take the time to identify one difficult reality for you through your diagnostic errancy journey, what is it at this point in life which is the most difficult to live through in this diagnostic errancy? Is it the waiting time? Is it the reactions that health professionals or may have around you? Is it the pain that you experience which is not relieved? And I would like to ask you to think about a situation that is difficult for you while you're waiting for a diagnosis, but at the same time, what is the emotion that can accompany this difficult situation, just so that we can identify an emotion? Maybe you'll say 50 words, or a tornado of emotions maybe will go through you. We'll do this briefly because we have a limited time for this workshop. We will see how it happens. But if you take the floor, maybe you could take just a brief moment to name one reality that is difficult for you in this whirlwind of emotions. And that could help you. That would help you break the isolation we're experiencing. It can do us a lot of good to see that other people are experiencing the same things around us. I don't know, Gail, if you are going to help me through that. I don't know, where are the raised hands? Maybe you can help me, Gail. Okay, just before we start, I don't know. Earlier we heard you better than today. There is a buzz. Oh, yes. Your microphone, did anything change? No. We can still hear you above the buzz. Suzanne, she's telling me that she doesn't hear well. Well, there's a background noise. We can still hear you. So there's a background noise? Oh. Oh, I'm in a very quiet room, though. Well, if nothing changed since last time, maybe it's external interference. Speak just a little bit louder, but we understood that you asked participants. Our technician says it might not be the right microphone that has been activated. Okay, maybe I should not turn on this one. Can you turn, is there more than one microphone? Yes. Earlier, he heard me without the microphone. Well, there's only one microphone. I don't see another one. They spoke to me and that mic was not on. I'll turn it off and we'll see. If I hold my microphone closer to my mouth, can you hear me? Yes, we hear you. Okay, okay. I'll try to work through this. Get the sound a little bit louder, maybe. Okay, we'll start now. But we hear you. It's just that there is interference and static. The question that I was asked is try to name emotions, or at least one emotion, which you experience in your quest for a diagnosis during your diagnostic errancy, what you went through, or a situation that makes you experience that emotion, a situation that makes you experience that situation. Does someone want to try? Give it a try.
Je ne vois pas de main levée.
I don't see any raised hand, no comment. Maybe I can read something. I don't know if it can help, and you will segue as you wish, Joanne. There is a Natalie here. Yes, who raised her hand. Natalie Martellino, maybe she will speak. I'll take my courage and break the ice. Yes, courage is so important. The reason is because I have to take, if it was in person, I would be more comfortable, but with Zoom, whatever. Anyway, in 17 years of errancy, I've had a lot of emotions. It went through all kinds of paths. And if there is one thing that I could pinpoint in my case is not being believed. And as Dr. Yarjo was saying, not being believed is terrible. It's an awful feeling. I don't know how to say it, but it's so much an attack that is so deep. I didn't say it was deep the first time that I wasn't believed, but maybe not the second time or the third time, but the 100th time where I'm not believed, get feelings. I feel this as an attack. And it's the way that the people make me know that they don't believe me. Uh, we shouldn't take the patients for, how can I say, idiots, not idiots, but we can read what's happening, not being believed, but we guess behind that what the doctor might be thinking. So we fall into psychiatric uh, diagnoses, and that's a horrible feeling. In my case, it's like if in my life I've always been a person that is respected. I'm a person who is respected in my life, and I see this non-believing as a form of non-respect, a very deep form of lack of respect. And it affects me to such an extent that earlier we spoke about the post-traumatic syndrome. In my case, I had absolute confidence in the health system. I even worked in the health system, not from a clinical point of view, but still, I'm comfortable with this. But it's another point that intimidates me now. If I have to speak to a physician, I lose all my skills. I feel totally devoid of all my abilities because I was too much humiliated. To me, it's humiliation. And humiliation is very big because since you take care of, I took care of my own care, I get my lab results, I get the notes that were written in my file. And when I read the evolution notes of the doctor in my file during our discussions, I feel some hypocrisy that happened during this appointment. I'm a person who trusts others, right? I'm confident, I trust other people. I feel like being betrayed. There's a form of betrayal in all that. It's really, when I look at the progress notes, it's a feeling that has affected me in the deepest recesses of my being after 17 years of not being believed. And sometimes I even wonder, will I ever become like I was before? It goes that far. Thank you very much for that sharing. It's a good sharing, Natalie. And I hear through that how difficult it is for you at this point, how humiliating it was for you. I was speaking this morning about how I was received. There are so many situations and all that that are difficult to experience. Sometimes I even tell myself, each time I have to show up in front of a new physician, which is a specialist, of course, but each time I'm introduced to a new doctor, being able to tell my story and not knowing how he or she is going to react. Someone told me one day, you're good, you can speak to doctors, you can explain the symptoms you have. Just that takes courage. And it's true also. What you're saying is so true. Somehow, when we're not received, when we're not welcomed, we're even being told offensive words. It's similar to what Doris Cyrulnik, the neuropsychiatrist, said when he spoke about the concept of resilience and the capacity to rebound after hurtful words. and hurtful language, it helps me think a lot about, he speaks a lot about trauma. He says a person that has a big trauma in a situation of abuse or something like that, and the person reports on on the abuser. And if someone does not believe the abused person, she says it's like putting abuse on top of abuse. So that might be different as a situation, but a trauma can happen. People, we might think when we feared for our lives and we see someone whose life is threatened or someone who's about to die, but it touches our health, it affects our health. But at the same time, it affects our health. But at the same time, when we're not believed, it's something that is similar to that. It's like if we get another trauma, we get an attack on top of all the attacks we have of having symptoms we don't understand, having pain. So you describe it in very nice words, Natalie, how this can be difficult and how at the same time we might come to lose confidence in others and in oneself. I think it's difficult. Every person has to try by themselves to see what they can do, how we can come back to ourselves and be able to tell ourselves, well, that doesn't belong to me. I have no control over that. Like this morning, I was telling you what the physician told us. Somehow it didn't belong to him, but it touched me deeply. And how, after that, after talking about it, after taking time to speak about it, I about how I experienced that. How can we get through that? But it's indeed an emotion which is very heavy to bear. And I think we can say that it's an injury. It's one more attack, it's one more hurt in the arduous journey we're going through.
Joanne,
Would
peux-tu
anybody, Joanne, maybe can you speak louder?
oui, dans ta main ou
Put
dans
your
ta
microphone in
bouche?
your hand or
Est-ce que
speak
tu es
louder.
le micro
I'll
est
try
derrière
something.
ta bouche ou parler plus
Put it
fort?
closer to your mouth. We lost you a bit then. The problem is the computer. It's my technical assistant is telling me that the problem is my computer. She's trying to do something.
Attends, je vais demander
In the
si quelqu'un
meantime,
d'autre
I will ask if
peut.
someone else can
On a un
speak.
commentaire
We have a comment
qui est peut-être pas du même ordre
which is not of the same order. Doesn't
que
matter.
vient de parler. C'est-à-dire que
It might not be in the same line of what we just spoke about. The person is expressing what we spoke about this morning, the lack of communication among specialists between themselves. Maybe we can link that to frustration, right? Frustration that about the fact that the file is not looked at as a whole for a person, and there's a lack of communication. So it's like the elephant that Isabel Jordan showed us earlier. I sometimes use that picture in presentations. One person, every person looks at one part of the elephant, the ears, the leg, and the tail, but we don't get the grasp the whole situation. And that too can be a source of frustration. There are so many things that can be sources of frustration. And when I speak about the emotion we experience, we've heard these very often. I know a person who is just preparing her, her master's thesis or a PhD thesis. She spoke that she had studied diagnostic errancy. And I spoke to you earlier about chaos. We can feel sadness, anger, depression. We can feel suffering, powerlessness, pain, and all that, distress, disarray, all those emotions that I heard in therapy. All answers are right. There's no right or wrong answer. That could be linked to all kinds of situations. I'm looking at time. I'm trying to make sure that uh, we have time to do things, but you'll have other opportunities to express yourselves. Would somebody else want to add something on this? No, apparently. But if you want to continue with another question or thought, go ahead. Well, I feel like speaking a bit about emotions, because when you experience all those things, we can get out of an appointment by feeling hurt, disoriented, disconcerted, and telling yourself, I don't want to meet anybody else because it's so hurtful, the way I'm being received. I want to think now and lead us to think, what can we do when we have heavy emotions like that? What are the ways that can help us feeling better, getting back your well-being? Actually, what came to me is that we should see, what can we do? If, for example, if we have a heavy emotion like dismay, we can try to find distractions. We can come back home and let's say I watch a show, and I won't think. Let me stop thinking about that. That could be a way of coping with pain or dismay. There are times where we just can need to empty our head and put our attentions on other things. That can help. But what could help also is to think about it again at one point, because if we just repress that emotion, it's likely to come up, surge up at another moment. It might not be solved, and maybe if we live that again, we will still be in a feeling of humiliation that will be totally legitimate, but we will feel even more oppressed later on. So what I felt like saying is, what can we do with those emotions? For example, I'm thinking about what Natalie just said. What, uh, how could we desire to express this, whether it's anger, helplessness, powerlessness, whether it's frustration? Expressing your emotion and taking care of it might mean to cry. It might be to speak about it to someone. And speaking about it to someone, it might be someone around us in our surroundings, a relation, a friend, someone in the family. Let me take a drop of water because I'm literally uh, dried up. And I thank your sister, Suzanne. I think she solved the sound problem. Now we hear you very well.
Micro était mal branché.
The
Bon.
microphone was not connected properly. Okay, that's what it was.
Ah,
I can
bon,
let go
ben,
of my microphone. Okay, now it's perfect. Oh, relief. And my sister will have a big reward for everything she did during the month of February. So I was saying it can mean to cry, it can mean to speak about it to someone, so as not to leave it all inside. And sometimes in people around us, as we said in the brochure, Living Without a Diagnosis, there are people who will be helpful in our environment, in our surroundings, in our neighborhood. There are people around us who will be in that situation. If we are going through a difficult emotion, some people might tell you, oh, you're making it too much of a big thing. You're worrying too much. Don't worry about that. That will be solved. Everything's you're a drama queen a bit. You're fabulating. It's not that big a thing. Some people and their personality and the way they solve things, it might be because they feel embarrassed, they feel powerless, and they want to. They don't like seeing the person and their loved one, hearing that person's suffering and expressing her suffering. Sometimes I tell myself, and it happened to someone who was close to me, to say to the person, listen, the only thing I need is not for you to say, ready-made answers. It's just for you to hear me. I just want you to listen to me. I just need to say, hey, look, I found this so hard today. Look, or look, I'm tired. I'm fed up. The diagnosis is changing again. I can't have another appointment before 6 months. So it's just listening. It could be expressed that way. It could be, if we need to speak about it, maybe we could join a self-help group all the time. What group should I join? I don't have any specific disease. I can't go in towards MS. That's not what I have. I can go to Parkinson. At one point, we were told I had Parkinson. Now it's not that anymore. Is there a group that exists? A support group? I see that at the RQMO, you're working on this, and we already had a meeting where we had an exchange, or we were able to give ourselves mutual support. There's Audrey Sassville also, who spoke this morning, and she has a support group for undiagnosed people, people without a diagnosis. We can see that group on the RQMO website. I think it's a great initiative. I myself started to go there, and there are very interesting sharings. And and we know it doesn't solve anything. We know it's an arduous journey. It could be comforting to know that there are other people who have similar experiences. We can feel, we can share another person's burden. We can lighten it up and put it on the ground for some time. If we need to express the strong emotions we're going through, it that a solution might be to write your diary or draw what you're feeling. What helped me and what still helps me was to draw. I showed you some drawings this morning. I don't know if we could see them again for a moment. Maybe some people didn't see them. Who is the technician here? Is it Jean-Philippe? Yes. Oh, that is a very early drawing. I didn't follow any drawing courses. I've always loved to draw. It's a drawing that I did during the diagnostic errancy period. I see myself had installed my things at the beginning. I had much more motricity, and it did me a lot of good. I just put my easel and I focused on that. And there was a second drawing. Oh, that's my little bird. I can tell you that my bird will not help me express my emotions, but it can make me laugh. She can make me laugh sometimes. She can be a distraction and bring me some comfort when she tries to hide in my hair. At one point, I started to weep, and she started licking my tears. It could be a comforting presence, even if she doesn't understand what I'm telling her. But I think there was another drawing that followed. That was probably during a more difficult day. As what I was explaining this morning is that to me, there was something that was more like desert-like in this. We don't see the top too well, but the sky is dark, and the little herbs that we see are more arid. And that translated the way I felt that day, whether it's about the symptoms or the diagnostic errancy, those tiny grasses. Uh, Drawing, or that could be a way to express emotions. I feel like asking you once again, if there's one or two people, a few people who would like to express themselves, you can take the time just to stop a bit and to look and try to tell us, what do you use as ways to express those heavy emotions that we experience through our diagnostic errancy? Maybe by sharing them, that could ring a bell in someone, and that would be another way to help us mutually. So I invite you, if you feel like just sharing, how do you cope with difficult emotions? How can you express those challenging emotions? Audrey raised her hand. Okay. Hi, hello. Hi again, Audrey. Yes, I write a lot. I write poems. When I have too many emotions, I'm too full of emotion. When I have too much anger, for example, a professional one day told me, "Oh, your symptoms to me is just like wind blowing in the wind," and I was very mad, angry. It happened very often that we spoke about suffering. I work a lot inside of myself. I work hard at channeling my anger so it comes out well. But sometimes I write a letter to the doctor, which I will never send, which I keep to myself. I write all my frustrations. I'll never send that letter. I just write my frustrations on a piece of paper. It happened to me once that I went with one of my friends in the woods really far just to shout, to scream, to get out all the anger I had in myself. I didn't think that I could scream that loud. Did me a lot of good. Otherwise, of course, it's costly. Therapy, a private therapy paid by out of your pocket, but personally, it helps me a lot. And also singing. I sing a lot, and it helps me. Oh, great. So that's it.
C'est beau ton partage, Audrey, hein. C'est vraiment tous des moyens qui peuvent aider, plutôt que de garder tout ça en dedans de soi et ça devient lourd. Puis
rather than keeping all of that inside of you that becomes very heavy. I know that when I have these heavy emotions and the more I have them, the greater the stressors and the more the symptoms will increase. And that's what I don't, that's not what I want. So everything you listed, and you know, when writing poems, you said you write poems, and it might be worthwhile if we have a support group. It might be worth one day to also read a poem that we wrote during our diagnostic agency, or a drawing that we made too, or to go out and scream in the woods. That's super, because we can't do that when we're sitting in the doctor's office, but we need to externalize all of these feelings, all of this anger. And I think all of these means and these approaches, Audrey, are wonderful. Anybody else feel like sharing? Nobody? Perhaps there's no one else.
Il y a un sujet que tu m'as déjà abordé. Je
You've
ne sais pas si
broached
tu me
a
dis là, c'est
subject
un petit extrait
before.
qui
I
vient
don't know if you would allow me to read an excerpt of the guide that we've just launched about family members.
Il dit là, il sera
We
souvent
read that
difficile
often this guide
des gens qui sont
is
venus
preparing people
par
at the
de diagnostic. Il
outset
sera souvent
of their
difficile
diagnostic journey. It will often be difficult for others to recognize the needs, special needs, and particulars of your child, but it could be an adult when you're unable to give them a diagnosis. Some people might doubt or express non-believability, or because they can't put a name to a specific condition, or perhaps to overcome your own denial, as is such for your family members. Certain parents have described their family members as being too optimistic as well. They will state, oh, it will pass, especially when referring to a child. The child will grow up and it's going to pass. And then they're too optimistic. They could be annoying and also contradictory to not get the support and the validation that you look for. And the last thing you want to do is to spend your time convincing others that something's wrong. Therefore, we read here, it's not that they're being mean or that they are that they're not empathetic. It's simply because they do not understand. Oh, yes, totally. And I don't know if this is something you can share about. Hadn't you not shared that you had written a letter to your family, I believe, to explain your situation even more so? Ah, wasn't that you? No, perhaps that wasn't me. But I find this letter idea interesting. When listening to you, I tell myself sometimes it's worth the trouble of taking time, as we heard earlier, to sit down with the person and to simply say, I just need you to listen to me, not to just hatch a ready-made solution. I remember at one point I was experiencing a difficult situation with somebody, and I had shared this with a colleague, and I had decided to write a letter to this person. And this colleague had said, it's excellent to proceed this way because the person will read it. And normally we'll read it all the way to the end, and we're not going to launch into a debate or an argument after 2 lines. And after that, just within a situation where we can speak to one another again calmly, we will do so. Or if it's not possible to speak calmly, well, there are people for all sorts of reasons not of ill doing, but sometimes they're in denial and sometimes they do not understand. Well, we might decide to not see them as often, or to not report to them what we're experiencing and living in terms of the situation, because it's only going to continue to raise those heavy emotions inside of us. And one thing that's coming back to me about this, I always say, we live things inside. Each one of you, you are living this rare diseases inside. And people, your children, people cannot understand at all. And I don't know where I heard this or read this, like maybe this morning, but again, you're looking at me and you can't tell what I'm living inside, what my symptoms are, how I feel. It's not printed on my forehead or in my face. And people will tend to think that you exaggerate, but you know what you're living, what you're experiencing. And to make choices, then I think is a good idea. And you can tell yourself, this person is part of my environment all the time, and that's okay. And if you don't want to report what relates to your disease or what you're experiencing in terms of diagnostic errancy, it's okay not to share it. And what I also felt like saying, as regards emotions, we can feel many emotions, we can feel many stressors. At times, we can even no longer know what we're feeling because we are caught up in this spiral, because there's powerlessness, because there's frustration, because there's lack of comprehension, because of fear of our symptoms that increase without assistance and support, because the pain that we're experiencing, physical, psychological pain. In some situations, I would say that it might be useful, as our colleague said earlier, to go into therapy or to try to seek assistance. I know there's the pandemic that's not quite over yet, and I hear colleagues saying that they are swamped, and within the next month, I will stop working as a psychologist, but we can try to see if there's a psychologist or anyone else. It could be within a community resource. One thing that I found to be helpful, I would say helpful for having used it myself personally, at some points, I ended up tired, exhausted, crushed, uncertain, with a need to speak to somebody. At times when it's 11:30 and we can't sleep and we need to speak to somebody and we don't have anybody next to us, well, we can call upon our resources. I would say that I have called before on a few occasions, uh, in info social, or, I said, look, I'm a psychologist and this evening I'm living such and such a situation. All I need is for somebody to hear me out and to listen to me. I've always had a good ear, and I think for the most part, social workers would have told me such and such a resource could perhaps help you with this or with that, in an attempt to find better means, to find greater support for transportation or anything else. And I feel like telling you, when you feel overwhelmed, try to turn. Of course, there's the MFO, and I think there's good listening here too. And I know that with the iRare Center, you can also direct people. You can see with them if there are other specialists that could assist them. And I just wanted to say about the brochure, to live without a diagnosis. I was thinking, I read it, I was thinking at the same time of all those aspects on how to speak with professionals, how to deal with all of the ups and downs in life, and how we might need greater support, and how to help us help our child. And they talk about it in this brochure, how to live better and a better life, that we can also
Oups,
lack of connection.
il arrive quelquefois que chez nous, on perd
At times we
connexion au
lose
travail, ça se peut
the
qu'on
Wi-Fi
ait
connection, the internet
Joanne.
connection. Perhaps we just lost Joanne.
OK. Je sais pas s'il y a quelqu'un
Okay.
de l'équipe qui a une
I don't know
façon
if
de
there's
joindre
somebody within the
Joanne.
team that has a way to reach out to Joanne. Ah, there she
Suzanne
is.
est encore à ton
Or
secours.
Suzanne is coming to help you. Yes, I think she deserves a great reward. I think she'll join our technical team that assisted us the entire month, and I think they're going to hire her. Yes, you should include her in your acknowledgements, or those people to acknowledge and to thank. I was going to say, we can also check what we can do concretely to reduce our stress, regardless of the situation. In my case, yes, when meeting with social workers, or it didn't always go well, but I would always walk in with my paper pad and my pencil. One day, neurologists would ask, what do you have on your little paper today? And is there anything more on your little paper? And it caused me to chuckle at the same time, and it would sort of lighten up the conversation. And it could be about taking steps. In my case, it's happened for the first MRI at the end of a month. I hadn't received the results, and I would call up the doctor and say, Dr. Egg, we haven't received the reports, and why weren't they communicated faster? And so one day I told myself, I'm going to go on the premises, I'm going to go on site. And so and then I had asked the hospital conveying the results. And then I was told that there were numerous lesions in terms of the white myelin. And this caused me a great deal of stress, but at least I took the steps and I went onto the premises to get the results. And I see time going by. And what I wanted to mention, yes, and I'd like to give you a comment. There's a person who, even if she received her diagnosis, she finds it difficult to be believed regarding the rare form of cancer she presents with, and we greatly addressed that this morning. And earlier as well, you spoke of the issue of when we're not believed, and our BC guest, Isabel Jordan, she mentioned how we have to partner with physicians and to be listened to. I saw another message that, hang on, that recommended 811. 811 for somebody to hear you, to listen to you. A few years ago, Christine, we had recommended this, and it didn't work very well. The people were in a flare of chronic pain, they would call 811. And anyway, but I believe, and I think it's really very much tied to the pandemic. I think the service has now expanded and evolved. And finally, I think there's psychological assistance. I don't know if there's another number other than 811. What I also read at the Times, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gail. We know that there's also the Greater Montreal Reference Center, and they have all sorts of community resources. Yes, RQMO, we use that, and the support portion that we offer is to locate all these agencies or organizations located closest to the person, because we cover the entire province of Quebec, and our information agent and stakeholder, that's what she does. She finds those resources in all regions within the province. Another thing somebody is writing, in the case of somebody with chronic pain, there's the Quebec Pain Association, and this is a place where we refer people because they do have support groups and they have funding regarding chronic pain. It's the Quebec Association of Chronic Pain. And as you said, these are things we can include in our life. They won't necessarily resolve everything, but they'll help us navigate all of this and move a few steps forward. There are no miracle solutions, but all of these answers and all these steps that we can try to put forward, it's worthwhile. And what I felt like telling you as a last point, because I have 15 minutes, that throughout all of this, through diagnostic errancy and with your last guest, she spoke about this and we spoke about this uncertainty to not know, will we ever get the diagnosis or not? It greatly mobilizes our resources to try to move forward in our quest to find the right professionals and to even turn to those means that can help us living better. I paid for healthcare services, physical therapy, massage therapy, in short, things that could assist me and help me. Throughout all of this, it might not lead up to a diagnosis and we feel discomfort, but I tell myself I have a life to live. We have a life to live. I told you that somebody told me what I wanted for the next decade. I said, I have a life to live. I'm not saying that we must forget everything. Somebody who is troubled by the pain, by the discomfort, will perhaps find this to be difficult to plan ahead. I was reading lately, I no longer recall where I read this. I'm very curious, and I read all sorts of things, and I was hearing that our brain needs to have projects. A project on a day when I don't feel well, I'm experiencing a great deal of pain and fatigue. The project could be to raise my head out of the bed and to read something that's interesting, or to take a nap, or to take my little bird and to have her wander all over myself and all over me, and to look at her, and finally to leave the stress and the sensory effect. The project to me is no longer to engage on a long hike. I can no longer walk outside in the evening when it's dark. I can't do that anymore. I'm likely to fall, and to house clean is becoming more challenging. I don't mind setting that aside and leaving it over to somebody else. Cooking for a long period of time, I can't do that either. I have to prepare very quick meals that are well suited to my condition. This is possible, and to adapt to our capacities and to continue to hold projects while taking into consideration our strengths, and to with the purpose of living. And I was telling myself that I think what I feel like telling you, what I feel like telling the participants, is to allow yourself to dream, even if you're living diagnostic errancy, to afford yourself tiny oases, tiny islands, tiny moments to help you live your life. And I feel like telling them just that, to continue to dream. And and the last question I felt like asking you is, what would a project be to you? A project that would make you feel good, even if there are things you can no longer do, that you can adapt. And I feel like telling you, before Christmas, I was making decorations. I was trying to sprinkle glitter on decorative things that I was putting together. My arm was so tired and exhausted. And I told myself, how am I going to do this? And what would I do if I were a child? And I found a way to do so. And sometimes I tell myself, oh, well, this is where I'm at. It's as though I were becoming a child again. I spoke of compassion and self-compassion. This is it for me. And finally, it's to achieve things and realize things. People around me said, oh, what you did is beautiful. Perhaps I would have been capable of doing far more beforehand, and now I do less, but I still do some. Or at times I'll draw. I showed you drawings earlier, but now my drawings are about water painting and putting colors together and looking at putting together little characters that may look like children's characters. But what is beautiful deep down is not perfection, but imperfection. That's what I tell myself. I want to leave you the space, the room, to ask yourself, what projects would you like to take up in order to soften this period, and to not forget to live your life throughout all of this. If some wish to express themselves, Audrey was telling me earlier that she would write poems. In short, anybody can have projects, big or small. What would you dream of doing that you're perhaps not doing because you're too inundated by everything you are living and experiencing? And the floor is yours. Otherwise, I'll ask Gail the question, even if you're not living a diagnostic errancy. Oh, we are still living certain things in one's life. Of course. In the past years, I set aside many, many things that I feel like doing because, as you said, we have a life. And I've reached 65 years of age, and this is when we tell ourselves, oh, perhaps we don't have too many left ahead. And so I'll tell you one of the things that I'm looking into these days, and I really couldn't during the February month, but if this might be of interest to you, art therapy. There are many, many types of therapies. Somebody contacted you that is into dance therapy. This is somebody who is a dance therapist, and we might even consider holding a workshop. So there's art therapy with COVID. All this was placed online, and perhaps to reach this, join it, might force us to do things we thought we'd want to do, but sometimes there are obstacles and barriers when it comes to hopping on a bus or mass transit or in a car, and especially in the winter when it's not nice out. But now there are things online virtually. I will give you a name and you can look into it, Les Ruches d'Art, and D and apostrophe ART. That's one workshop. There are other types of art workshops, and these are things I'm interested in. They could be of interest to others. And generally speaking, they cost nothing. These are organizations that set this up, they plan this, and they're OBNLs or they're nonprofit organizations. And, you know, we would refer people to McGill, to the McGill University Health Center. There was a researcher working, among other things, on self-management of chronic conditions, pain. She had set up a program. These programs exist in some locations. They're self-management. They're workshops where we learn to self-manage a chronic disease, pain. Of course, this would be equally good to manage diagnostic errancy. And they used to call this the toolbox. And this was provided over several weeks, would refer people there. It gives you a toolbox to get through certain things. I'll tell you, some really enjoyed it, and other people, perhaps it wasn't their cup of tea, but in the toolbox, there are things we often hear about: relaxation techniques, meditation, yoga, based on one's physical abilities, of course. And I figure these are perhaps things that can help. I don't know if you've been through certain phases where you tried things of the sort. Yes, certain years ago, I attended one of these workshops. I was experiencing chronic pain, and I did go with the toolbox workshop. You're speaking of art therapy, and I was about to forget to mention it because I started, in fact, it was, when was it? I believe it was last fall or last summer. I went to meet an art therapist. This was done partly in her office, partly on Zoom. And this helps me a great deal, makes me feel better. And it helps me to welcome it because it's not about doing things to perfection. It's really about expressing what comes to us, the way it comes to us. And it did me a good deal of good. I also feel like saying regarding art therapy, when I say to come up with a project, it could be tiny, tiny. And in my life, because of my gastrointestinal disease, I had a great deal of chronic pain and I wanted to create. But sometimes I was so caught up in my pain that I could not do so. And it's okay. There were days when I couldn't do anything. But at one point, I told myself, and I'm learning to do this, I told myself, well, if I'm feeling pain, perhaps I can still nonetheless do something, perhaps not draw or do anything for an hour, but I can start small. So start small to do exercises that help me. Or if I do my physical therapy exercises, I don't have to do the entire program. I can do 2 or 3 exercises a day, small, within tolerance and compassion. I feel like telling you about this as well. Look, we're allowed to collapse, we're allowed to fall. It's like, okay, I started to do such and such a thing that helps me. Okay, I found such and such a means to express my emotions, and suddenly I don't feel like it anymore because I'm in a depressive stage. And in my case, it's neurodegenerative. And sometimes I have new symptoms and I feel depressed because I tell myself, oh, there's something else I can no longer do and I can't manage it anymore. And then I talk to myself and it passes. After a while, I tell myself, oh, well, I can still accomplish such and such a thing. I'll find ways to adapt, to continue to live and to proceed and to start small. And Professor Bordelot wrote several books. I remember in one of her books, in one of the conferences she gave, she said, it's not the number of times we fall that matters, but the number of times we get back up and we don't have to be perfect and we can adapt to the slowness and to the difficulties or the challenges. Maybe you'll leave here and perhaps little seeds will have been planted and things will remain in mind. I hope tools will have helped you. And I hope the sharing will have helped you. In conclusion, I had a tiny thought to share with you this morning and today. Throughout my life, I think this is part of my resilience. I read many, many, many stories on courage. I always felt like reading stories related to adversity, testimonials. Probably this resonated with me based on what I was experiencing and living. And lately, something made me think of Helen Kinner. She was born in 1880 with a disease at 19 months old that left her completely deaf and blind. And if you like looking into her story, Helen Keller, she lived up to 97 years of age, I believe, and accomplished incredible things. She wrote 10 or so books. I'm reading one of her books. It's called The World I Live In. And she reports how she sees the world from touch, based on smell, and based on her imagination and to what extent it helps her. And I tell myself, and hearing impaired and blind, and she managed to accomplish such things. Very, very inspiring. She speaks of the darkness and how others help pull her out of this darkness. And then I ask myself how she helped herself and while helping others and learning to communicate with others through words, a language. Her professor was writing words on her hand. I find her very inspiring, and I wanted to leave you with a fine thought from her. She speaks of the night that swaddles her and how she managed to see through it. Might the technician post this on the screen? And it's beautiful. And I thank Isabel, who gave me a helping hand the other night because I'm not very good with any technical creativity on the computer. And this thought says, this is how friends created the story of my life, 1,000 different ways. They transformed my physical imperfections in wonderful privileges and placed me in a way that I could walk in a serene manner and happily through the night that swaddles me. And even so, in this night that swaddles me or that swaddled her, she managed to see the light. I wish you to see the light. I wish you to have people around you to support you and to help you see even more so. And I wish you will find the light inside of you to see what you can do, to express your emotions, to take care of yourself, and to continue to live your life while hoping that you will receive a diagnosis, while also hoping that you may continue to try to live. There will be challenging moments. There will be beautiful moments as well. I reassure you. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for this final quote from Helen. It's really something to read her story and her books. And at that time, people like her, hearing impaired, blind, sight impaired, these people were often institutionalized, and she managed to do a whole bunch of things in her life. And we had a last comment to specify that Madame Bordelot, I don't recall her name, but you spoke about yogurt, and she has free podcast, Nicole Bordelot, and we can find them on the web, I suppose. So thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you. I believe, I know it's difficult for you as well. An entire long day like this is certainly more challenging. And I believe that it was a fine ending with the advice and the thought of those living with diagnostic errancy or who live with a rare disease. We know it can be challenging, even if one receives a diagnosis, because it's a rare one and it could be very difficult in our healthcare system to find support.
And also, what we could do is, we have our new website, which will come out soon. We put our rare communities in there, including the undiagnosed community. And if Ms. Audrey Sassville so authorizes, we'll put the link to her Facebook to our private Facebook page. It's a private Facebook page, but it's nice for sometimes that it's private because people can easily talk with each other. So we could give the link for people who want to have exchanges on that Facebook site. I will let Audrey say one last thing and then we are going to leave. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, we do. Yes. So anyone can join the group. It's not my group, it's our group. I mean, the more people we are, the better we are. And it's called Diagnostic RNC in Quebec. So you can share that link. It's my pleasure. Okay, thanks. So I will just take a few minutes to give some concluding remarks for this whole month of February. Quickly, I would like to thank everybody. And if you want to stay 5 or 10 more minutes, I will quickly go through the a few quick slides. Maybe I should first open it up. I thought it was already open. There we go. So patience, we're just about to end our journey. I think I wrote my name wrongly. We're not taking a break here. We're just concluding. Just a minute. I'm going to share my screen.
Vous le voyez?
Can you see it? Okay. So thank you for this educational day today. Thanks to everyone who made testimonials, all those people, and our two workshop moderators, Dr. Audrey and Ms. Johanne Bélanger, and also our guests from Great Britain who came to speak to us about their support group that has been in place for a long time to help undiagnosed people over there, and Ms. Isabel Jordan from British Columbia. I think what we can remember out of that, what I remembered regarding the medical environment, the medical community. Of course, during this month, the month that just elapsed, our month of February, our goal was, of course, to sensitize the general population about diagnostic errancy. Apart from people around you, I think there's a lot of people who don't know what it means to have a rare disease, and they don't know that it can take up to 8, 9, 10 years for someone to be diagnosed, or maybe they will never be diagnosed with a disease. So raising the population's awareness about this was important, I think. We had Joanne and Ms. Joseph, Tommy's mother, who have done interviews in the media. So that raises the population awareness about that reality. But one of our goals is also to raise the awareness of the medical community. And I remembered, I repeat what Audrey said this morning. It's not necessarily bad faith. We know that doctors cannot learn 7,000 rare diseases, and it's not a question of bad faith. There's more physicians who feel powerless compared with doctors who have a bad welcome to patients in a diagnostic and gave them a diagnosis of psychosomatic illness. We know there are some that exists, but what André Yergeau was saying is that simply most physicians feel helpless. They don't know where to go. They believe they're patients, but they don't know where to go. That's what the majority of physicians do. So that's why we ask that there should be something in the medical environment so that the doctors think that it can be a rare disease and that there are resources where they can refer their patients, or as doctors, they can speak to mostly GPs but also urgentologists. When you're undiagnosed and you go to emergency, it's very difficult for people. They're badly received. And getting support during that journey. So that's what I remember. And in terms of support and management, I think that Joanne gave us a lot of possible solutions. It must be difficult to get through this period of errancy. But in the guides we translated, there are possible avenues, and Joanne has given some of them. The important thing, I think, is to speak and getting help, trying to have the activities. I also want to thank our sponsors who have made this month of February possible. We have never had that many activities during our month of February, and that was made possible thanks to them. Quickly, on February the 1st, we had our flash mob or mob flash, a surprise event close to the Desjardins complex in Montreal. And you will be able to find videos on our Facebook page. I think it was a great beginning for the month. It set the tones, a symbolic tone to this diagnostic errancy. I thank all the speakers we had who presented what we called our webinars. And I don't want to forget, I would be remiss if I forgot a person who's not here, Claudio Eugenia, who some of you know, and during a first webinar with me, she is the PhD student you were talking about, Joanne. She's doing her PhD about diagnostic errancy, and she spoke to us about a general situation. But once she gets upwards in her study, she will present her results. Of course, rare geniuses, I said it, that was a resounding success. Apparently, students found that fun, as they were saying. They found that contest really fun. And you will be able to see bits and pieces. We recorded several things because they were divided into different groups. In the first competitions, then there were the semifinals and the finals. And I think it was a first step forward to sensitize the students, the medicine students, to rare diseases. I named the winners here. It was a team of female students from the group of female students of Laval University, the Remule, and the team was called the Axons. And their names are Amanda Barnes Metra, Émilie Lavoie, Charlotte Dupont, and Sandrine Roche. And they will share a stipend of $2,000 following that competition. And as I said, questions will be made public and available to any student, to any health professional, and you too, if you're interested, to go through those questions and to learn more things. And I was speaking about the solutions that we have been putting forward during the whole month for easy solutions, cheap solutions, what we call easy and immediate actions, concrete actions, which we would like these things to happen during this year. And as I said, there is a policy that is currently being drafted by the Ministry of Health and Social Services, and they have received those applications. Thanks to all those who gave us testimonials and put some testimonials on our Facebook page in the last few days. We also received 2 videos of people who tell their story. Thanks to all these people. So I'd like to remind you, on our Facebook page, there is the French version of the Living Without a Diagnosis Guide. You can find the English version on the site of the Rare Disease Foundations. I put the web address there. We will put those on the Facebook page. And we also have this community, this rare community, which has already held a meeting, coffee shop of undiagnosed people, and we will continue. The more people we have, the more we get their points of view, their lenses, especially to find solutions to be proposed. to reduce diagnostic delays or to make them easier to live. I also want to go to our website, our rare health. Don't hesitate, don't be shy to write everything we said. On our website, you can get information about how we can help. We've already helped some people navigate through the health system and get a diagnosis, find a diagnosis after their search. And we can refer you to all kinds of resources and ideas. So thank you. And of course, I want to thank all those who organized and helped in the organization of this month of February. Of course, our team at the RQMO, Luc Charpentier, General Manager, Pamela Agile at the ER Center, Natsi Zadini, and we also had Ms. Sylvie Auger, who helped us a lot with the organization. Of course, Joe Son, who was here today and who was there all month for the seminars and for this day. This competition, they helped us to produce this virtually, and also Louis Junot, who was at communications. So thank you very much. In our programming, we were supposed to have something else. We said that during the day, International Day of Rare Diseases, which will be February 28th, on Monday, the last day of February, we had scheduled another webinar. We canceled it. We will do something else later. First of all, it's the week off that starts. It was supposed to be at 6:30 p.m. With all the webinars we had, we decided to postpone it until later, because later on we'll have more things to announce, including our new website, including an advisory medical scientific committee at the RQMO. We want to introduce to you the team and even the board of directors. We want to tell you in more detail the projects that we're having and so on. So we would leave you have your spring break quiet. We'll do this once we get closer to keep that for March with everything we did in the month of February. Thanks to all of you who followed us and took part in our seminars, and even some of you listened to the Rare Geniuses competition, Génie en Rare, and many people participated. I thank you all, and I leave you always with the idea that we're here to help. And the more you participate, the more we can reflect your points of view so as to find solutions for everybody in Quebec. So thank you very much.